Ethan never thought his life would take a turn like this. One moment he was flying his small exploration ship through an uncharted sector of the galaxy, hoping to find rare minerals to sell back on Earth. The next moment, he was being led into a grand palace full of glowing lights, strange music, and alien beings who all looked at him with reverence. It had started so innocently. Ethan's ship had suffered a minor engine failure, forcing him to make an emergency landing on a nearby planet. The planet was covered in shimmering golden sands and the sky glowed a soft violet, even though it was daytime. The air smelled sweet and slightly metallic, and strange plants swayed in the gentle breeze, their translucent leaves reflecting light and colors he had never seen. As Ethan stepped out of his ship, he noticed a crowd gathering in the distance. Curious, he walked toward it, expecting perhaps a welcoming committee or even some locals curious about a human visitor. Instead, he found a long pathway lined with statues of humanoid figures, all wearing elaborate crowns and robes. At the end of the pathway stood a massive palace made of shining crystal, taller than any building he had ever seen. Before he could think twice, a group of alien attendants approached him. They were elegant, with shimmering skin that reflected the violet sky, and their eyes seemed to glow softly. One of them, a tall figure with intricate patterns on their skin, bowed deeply. "Welcome, chosen consort," the alien said, their voice melodic but firm. Ethan blinked. "Excuse me? You have been chosen to stand beside Queen Lyra," the alien continued. "The ceremony begins now. Please follow." Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Wait, listen, I think there's been a mistake." But the aliens did not respond. They simply gestured for him to move forward, and before he could protest further, he was guided through massive crystal doors into the palace's main hall. The hall was breathtaking. It was enormous, with ceilings that seemed to reach the clouds. The walls were adorned with glowing murals that shifted and changed as he watched, depicting scenes of battles, celebrations, and strange flying ships. A soft golden light filled the room, coming from floating orbs that hovered in the air. Ethan felt completely out of place. His worn exploration suit and scratched boots looked absurd against the alien elegance surrounding him. At the far end of the hall stood Queen Lyra. Ethan had heard stories of alien royalty before, but seeing her in person was like stepping into a dream. She was taller than a human, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver. Her hair flowed down to her waist in waves of deep blue, and her eyes were something he would never forget. They glowed softly with a color that seemed to change depending on how the light hit them. Sometimes violet, sometimes gold, sometimes a mix of both. She was beautiful, regal, and utterly terrifying all at once. As Ethan's footsteps echoed through the hall, the crowd of aliens bowed in unison. Queen Lyra tilted her head, studying him carefully. There was no anger in her gaze, but there was curiosity, and a hint of amusement. Ethan swallowed hard. I think there's been a mistake. I'm just a human explorer. I don't know anything about marrying a queen." The queen's lips curved slightly. "Are you saying that you do not accept your role?" she asked, her voice soft but commanding. Ethan stumbled over his words. I didn't even know this was happening." The hall was silent for a moment. Then one of the attendants spoke. "The union is binding. By the law of the stars, your presence here confirms your acceptance." Ethan's heart sank. "Binding? Wait, you're saying I'm married?" "Yes," Lyra said simply, stepping forward. Her movement was graceful, almost floating, and she stopped a few meters away from him. "By your presence, you have consented. You may not fully understand our customs, but in this moment you are the consort of Queen Lyra." Ethan could feel sweat forming on his brow. His mind raced. How could he explain this? How could he escape without causing an interstellar incident? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The attendant, seeing his hesitation, guided him toward a platform in the center of the hall. On the platform, Ethan was presented with ceremonial robes that shimmered with colors that seemed alive. He tried to refuse, but the aliens gently but firmly dressed him. His reflection in a nearby crystal panel was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the rugged explorer. In his place stood a figure that the aliens treated with reverence. Queen Lyra approached him, her eyes now softening with what Ethan could only describe as curiosity. She extended a delicate hand. "Take my hand, consort, so that the ceremony may proceed." Ethan hesitated, then realized that refusal would likely offend not just her, but the entire court. Trembling, he took her hand. It was surprisingly warm and soft, with an energy that seemed to hum beneath his fingers. The crowd of aliens erupted into a chorus of melodic sounds, a kind of singing that vibrated through the hall. Ethan could feel it in his chest. The Queen spoke, her voice rising over the sound. "By the stars above and the laws of our people, we unite. Let the bond of this ceremony endure across time and space." Ethan blinked rapidly. He had imagined strange encounters in his life. Close calls in asteroid fields, alien wildlife, even minor skirmishes with space pirates, but nothing like this. He had accidentally married an alien queen. After the ceremony, the attendants led him to a side chamber. Ethan collapsed into a cushioned seat, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed. He could hear the distant celebrations from the hall and realized that everyone now considered him officially a part of Lyra's world. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You seem shocked," Lyra said as she entered the chamber. Ethan looked up. "Shocked? Yeah, you could say that. I didn't even know what was happening out there. One moment I was landing my ship, the next, bam, I'm married to an alien queen. How is this even legal?" Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him. "Our laws are not yours, but your presence was the confirmation needed. Your confusion does not change the bond. It is binding." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his face. "Binding? That's terrifying. I don't even know your customs. I don't know how to behave. I might offend someone without even realizing it." Lyra's lips curved in a small smile. "Perhaps that will make things interesting. I do not expect you to understand immediately. You will learn, and if you do not, there will be consequences. Gentle for now." Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "Gentle consequences, great. That's comforting." For the next few hours, Ethan was introduced to the palace's inner workings. He met advisors, ambassadors, and other alien officials who treated him with respect, yet he could sense a mix of suspicion and curiosity in their gazes. Everywhere he turned, the palace hummed with advanced technology, strange symbols, and glowing artifacts that defied his understanding. During a quiet moment, Ethan managed to sneak out onto a balcony overlooking the violet sands. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows over the land. He thought about his life back on Earth, about how he had planned for exploration but never for this. And yet, despite the fear, despite the absurdity, a small part of him felt a thrill. He had always wanted adventure, and this was more than he had ever imagined. He took a deep breath and whispered to the night sky, "All right, universe. If this is what you threw at me, let's see what happens next." Back inside, Queen Lyra watched him from a distance. She had seen countless consorts come and go, but something about Ethan intrigued her. His confusion was honest, raw, and human. Unlike others, he did not bow automatically to tradition. He was unpredictable. And in her experience, unpredictability could be powerful. As the stars of the alien planet began to glow in the night sky, Ethan realized he had no choice but to step fully into this new life. Accidental or not, he was now part of a world that was far larger, more complex, and more dangerous than anything he had ever known. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. The next morning, Ethan awoke in a room that seemed to glow from within. The walls were translucent, showing the swirling colors of the alien sky outside. Soft light pulsed gently, shifting from gold to violet, and strange floating plants hovered in small pots that defied gravity. Ethan rubbed his eyes. He was still trying to wrap his mind around the fact that he had married an alien queen. A soft chime sounded, and a panel in the wall slid open. An attendant entered, bowing deeply. "Good morning, Consort Ethan," the attendant said. "Queen Lyra requests your presence for the morning briefing." Ethan groaned. "Morning briefing? Right. What am I supposed to do? I barely know which way is forward here." The attendant smiled faintly. "You will learn. Please follow me." Ethan followed the attendant through the palace corridors. The hallways twisted and curved in ways that seemed impossible. Sometimes the floor seemed to slope slightly. Other times it felt as if he were walking straight, but the walls tilted. Ethan had learned to trust the attendants, though he still stumbled occasionally, bumping into floating orbs of light or mistaking a decorative hologram for a door. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with tables of glowing data panels. Aliens of various shapes and sizes were gathered around, each examining floating images of star systems, mineral deposits, and planetary maps. Queen Lyra stood at the head of the room, her silver blue hair cascading down her shoulders. She looked calm, regal, and, as always, slightly intimidating. "Good morning, Consort Ethan," she said, her voice soft but carrying authority. "Today you will begin learning the responsibilities of a consort." Ethan gulped. "Responsibilities like what? I can't even pronounce half of what's on these panels." Lyra's eyes sparkled with amusement. "You will begin by observing. Understanding our people, our technology, and our laws is essential. Your mistakes may teach you more than success." Ethan tried to hide a shiver. Observation sounded easier than jumping in blindly, but he knew he was already under scrutiny. He nodded. "All right, I'll observe." The briefing began, and Ethan quickly realized how alien this world really was. The panels displayed star systems with planets he had never seen, energy sources that defied physics, and colonies on worlds so hostile that humans would never survive there. The aliens discussed these with a kind of calm efficiency that made Ethan feel like a novice among masters. One of the advisors, a tall being with 4 arms, looked at Ethan. "Consort, do you have any questions?" Ethan hesitated. Yes. How do you, transport energy across light years?" The advisor raised an eyebrow. "You will learn in time. Understanding comes with observation and practice. It is not instantaneous." Ethan nodded quickly, feeling slightly embarrassed. He made a mental note to spend extra time learning. After the briefing, Lyra led him to a garden. It floated above the palace courtyard, with plants growing in midair and streams of liquid light winding between them. Ethan felt like he had stepped into a dream. "This is where you will spend time learning about our culture," Lyra said. "It is also a place for meditation and reflection. Many humans find it overwhelming at first." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Overwhelming is one word for it." Lyra tilted her head. "Do not worry. You will adapt. You have already survived the ceremony, which most humans cannot even endure mentally." Ethan blinked. "Survived the ceremony? That sounds like a warning." Lyra smiled faintly. "Consider it encouragement." Over the next few days, Ethan's life became a whirlwind of strange experiences. He learned to eat alien foods that shimmered and tasted like nothing he had ever known. Sometimes they were sweet, sometimes tangy, sometimes almost electrically tingling. He learned to use holographic panels by gesturing in the air. And he struggled to understand alien etiquette, bowing when necessary and resisting the urge to speak when silence was required. Despite the difficulties, Ethan began to find joy in the challenges. There was something exhilarating about learning entirely new ways of thinking, of experiencing a world so different from Earth. And through it all, Queen Lyra observed him. She remained formal, often distant, but occasionally, she would ask him questions about human life. Ethan would describe Earth's oceans, mountains, and simple joys like music and movies. Lyra listened intently, her glowing eyes reflecting curiosity and fascination. One afternoon, as Ethan practiced walking along the floating garden paths without stumbling, Lyra approached him. "You have a strange resilience," she said. "Most humans would crumble under pressure or flee entirely." Ethan laughed awkwardly. "I don't know if resilience is the right word. I just try not to die, I guess." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "Perhaps that is enough. Humans survive by trying, even when the odds are against them. That is admirable." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. The Queen had never praised anyone before, and hearing her speak kindly to him made the palace feel slightly less intimidating. But not everything was easy. Rival factions within the palace began to take notice of Ethan. Some whispered about the human consort, questioning whether he was capable of understanding alien customs. Others plotted to exploit his inexperience to weaken Queen Lyra's authority. One evening, as Ethan wandered the corridors, he overheard a group of advisors speaking in low tones. "The human cannot be trusted," one said. "He knows nothing. If we manipulate him, we can control the Queen." Ethan froze. He realized that his presence was more than ceremonial. It had political implications. Even as an accidental consort, he had become a figure of power, or a potential pawn. He retreated to a quiet room and tried to make sense of it all. He was out of his depth, surrounded by beings who had lived in this world all their lives, and yet he could not let fear paralyze him. He had survived worse in his exploration days, facing hostile planets and dangerous creatures, He would have to survive here too. The next morning, Ethan decided to take small steps to prove himself. He spent hours learning the palace's technology, observing security systems and practicing diplomatic gestures. He even attempted to speak in the alien language, stumbling over words but gradually gaining confidence. Queen Lyra noticed his efforts. One evening, she approached him as he practiced in the garden. "You are learning faster than I expected," she said. "Your curiosity is unusual for a consort," Ethan smiled. "I don't want to fail. Not just for me. For you too, I guess." Lyra considered him quietly. "Many consorts seek only to please. You seek understanding. That may be your greatest strength." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. He was far from mastering this alien world, but at least Lyra had noticed his effort. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was beginning to belong. Days turned into weeks and Ethan's confidence grew. He still made mistakes, like accidentally activating a defense drone or spilling a glowing drink on a ceremonial table. But his honesty and persistence earned him respect from many in the palace. Even some of the skeptical advisors began to see him as more than a naive human. Through it all, Ethan and Lyra developed an unspoken bond. She was still formal and enigmatic, but she began sharing glimpses of her personality, humor, curiosity, and even a faint affection for this clumsy human who had stumbled into her life. One evening, after a particularly long day of learning, Ethan found himself sitting with Lyra on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The twin suns were setting, casting golden and violet hues across the sky. "You have adapted well," Lyra said softly. Ethan shrugged. "I've had no choice. I can't just leave, and honestly, it's kind of amazing. This place, these people, it's nothing like Earth. It's alive in a way I never imagined." Lyra's eyes reflected the colors of the sunset. "You see beauty where others see strangeness. That is human, and perhaps that is why you are not like the others." Ethan smiled, feeling a strange sense of belonging. For the first time since the accidental marriage, he felt like he was not entirely out of place. He was learning, growing, and slowly becoming part of a world he had never expected to enter. But even as he enjoyed these moments, he could not ignore the whispers he had overheard, the political games at play. He knew that his journey was only beginning, and that challenges far greater than awkward ceremonies awaited him. He looked at Lyra, her glowing eyes calm and watchful. "I guess I need to keep learning fast." Lyra's lips curved faintly. "And you will. For now you survive by observing. Soon you will act." Ethan nodded, feeling both fear and excitement. The palace, with all its mysteries and dangers, was no longer just a place of confusion. It was a place where he could grow, prove himself, and perhaps even find his purpose. As the night deepened and the stars of the alien sky sparkled above, Ethan realized that while he had entered this world by accident, he would stay by choice. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to face it step by step, learning not just to survive, but to thrive beside the queen who had changed his life forever. Ethan's days in the palace had begun to feel more manageable. He could walk through the corridors without tripping over floating orbs. He could manage simple phrases in the alien language, and he had even started to remember some of the palace etiquette. But just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, a new reality hit him. This world was far more dangerous than it appeared. It began subtly. One evening, while returning from a study session with Queen Lyra, Ethan noticed a group of cloaked figures slipping through the palace's side corridors. Their movements were deliberate and silent, unlike the usual attendants. Ethan's curiosity got the better of him. He followed them cautiously, keeping to the shadows. He watched from behind a crystal column as the figures entered a hidden chamber beneath the palace. Strange devices hummed and glowed inside, projecting maps of the palace and its surrounding lands. Ethan's stomach tightened. He realized immediately that these were not ordinary palace workers. They were plotting something. One of the cloaked figures spoke in low tones. "The human consort grows stronger. We cannot let him gain Lyra's trust. If we remove him, the queen's position will be easier to control." Ethan froze. His heart pounded. He had suspected that not everyone in the palace approved of him, but he had never imagined anyone would plot against him. The words "remove him" echoed in his mind. This was no longer a game of etiquette and strange food. It was life or death. He retreated carefully, making sure the figures did not notice him. Once he was safely back in his quarters, Ethan sat down, his mind racing. He had always faced danger in his explorations, hostile planets, predators, even space pirates. But this was different. Here the enemy was intelligent, organized, and hidden within the very palace he was learning to navigate. The next morning, Ethan made a decision. He would not be a helpless pawn. He needed to understand the palace's secrets and protect himself, and Queen Lyra if necessary. He began spending hours observing the palace's hidden systems. He discovered secret corridors, hidden observation rooms, and even dormant security drones that could be activated in emergencies. His human intuition, which had saved him on countless dangerous planets, proved invaluable. While the aliens relied on precision and protocol, Ethan began noticing patterns and connections they overlooked. One afternoon, while exploring a rarely used corridor, he found a hidden terminal. Holographic screens lit up as he touched them, revealing communications between the rival factions. He learned that the conspiracy against him was extensive. They were planning a coup to weaken the Queen's authority, and he was a key target because of his human nature. Ethan felt a surge of determination. He may have been inexperienced, but he could think in ways the aliens did not. He memorized the data, noting the locations of hidden devices, the timing of patrols, and the identities of the conspirators. That evening, he sought out Queen Lyra. "Your Majesty," he said cautiously, "I've discovered something." "Dangerous." Lyra's eyes narrowed, her usual calm demeanor replaced with sharp focus. "Explain." Ethan recounted what he had seen, carefully avoiding unnecessary panic. Lyra listened without interruption, her glowing eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and calculation. "You have done well to uncover this," she said finally. "Most consorts would have ignored it or made mistakes that revealed themselves." "You observe." "That is valuable," Ethan nodded. "I want to help. I don't know much about palace politics, but I know how to notice things others might miss." Lyra's expression softened slightly. "Then you shall. But this will require trust. You must act with discretion and courage. Are you willing?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Yes, I won't let you or this palace fall because of me." Over the following days, Ethan worked quietly. He mapped the palace's hidden corridors, learned how to access security drones, and studied the patterns of the conspirators. Every time he moved, he made sure to leave no trace, careful not to alert anyone who might be watching. One night, while testing the palace's surveillance system, Ethan discovered a group of conspirators meeting in a secret chamber near the eastern wing. He observed as they discussed their plans in detail, unaware that he could see them through hidden cameras. They spoke of moving against the Queen during an upcoming diplomatic event, a gathering that would include representatives from multiple star systems. Ethan knew he had to act, but he also knew he couldn't confront them alone. He needed allies. The next morning, he approached a small group of palace attendants who had shown him kindness and curiosity since his arrival. "I need your help," he said quietly. "There's a plot against the Queen, and we have to stop it." The attendants exchanged wary glances. One of them, a small alien with shimmering green eyes, stepped forward. "We have suspected as much. But how can a human help? This is dangerous. Many have tried and failed." Ethan met their gaze firmly. "I may be human, but I notice things others miss. I've mapped the corridors, the patrols, and their meetings. I can help you stop them, but we have to act carefully." After a tense discussion, the attendants agreed. They would assist Ethan, providing access to restricted areas and sharing insider knowledge of palace security. Together, they formed a small secret team dedicated to protecting Queen Lyra. That night, Ethan and the team moved through hidden corridors, checking security systems and placing subtle alerts in key locations. It was exhausting work, but Ethan felt a surge of purpose he had never experienced before. He was no longer just an accidental consort. He was a protector, a strategist, and a vital part of the Queen's safety. As the days passed, Ethan's confidence grew. He began understanding not just the palace, but the people within it, the loyalists, the ambitious, the schemers. He learned to predict movements, anticipate actions, and even interpret subtle gestures that indicated hidden intentions. Queen Lyra observed his progress silently, sometimes joining him in these secret operations. Together, they discovered minor plots, intercepted false messages, and gradually dismantled the conspirators' network. Ethan's human perspective proved invaluable. Where the aliens relied on strict protocol and hierarchy, he relied on instinct, logic, and quick thinking. One evening, after successfully uncovering a hidden smuggling operation that the conspirators planned to use as leverage, Ethan and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons rose in the sky, casting silver and violet light over the palace. "You have grown quickly," Lyra said. "In weeks you have learned more about our palace than many born here. Your human perspective is unique," Ethan shrugged, smiling faintly. "I just try to notice what others ignore. Back on Earth, it kept me alive more than once." Lyra tilted her head, her eyes glowing softly. "It seems your experiences have prepared you for this place, whether you knew it or not. I underestimated the value of your presence." Ethan felt a warmth of pride mixed with humility. He had come to this world by accident, stumbled into marriage, and faced challenges he had never imagined. Yet now he was making a real difference. But even as he felt accomplished, he knew the danger was far from over. The conspirators were still out there, and some of their plans were too intricate to detect immediately. Ethan would have to remain vigilant, continue learning, and act decisively when the time came. That night, as he returned to his quarters, Ethan reflected on how much his life had changed. He had entered the palace as a confused human, overwhelmed by alien customs. Now he was actively shaping events, protecting the Queen, and discovering strength within himself he had never known. He realized that survival alone was no longer enough. To thrive, he would need courage, intelligence, and trust, not just in himself but in those around him, including Queen Lyra. As he gazed at the alien sky, the stars twinkling like distant jewels, Ethan understood one thing clearly. His journey was no longer about escaping an accidental marriage. It was about embracing his role, facing dangers head-on, and proving that a human could not only survive in an alien world, but could also change it. The shadows in the palace would not stop him. The conspirators would learn that underestimating a human was a grave mistake, and as Ethan prepared for the challenges ahead, he felt a growing sense of determination. This world was dangerous, unpredictable, and utterly alien, and he was ready to face it step by step, alongside the Queen who had become the center of his new life. The game had changed, and Ethan was no longer a pawn. He was a player. Ethan had learned much since arriving at the palace, yet nothing had prepared him for what was about to come. News spread that a formal challenge would determine whether he was truly worthy of being Queen Lyra's consort. The challenge was part of the palace tradition, an ancient ritual to ensure that anyone standing beside the Queen possessed not only courage and intelligence, but wisdom and integrity. He had never imagined being tested in such a way. On Earth, he had faced challenges that required strength or survival skills, but nothing that combined strategy, diplomacy, and alien traditions. Now he would need to prove himself not just to the Queen, but to the entire court, and to the rival factions that still whispered in the shadows. Queen Lyra approached him in the morning, her eyes glowing softly. "Ethan," she said, "the council has announced your participation. You will face trials of mind, body, and diplomacy. Failure could have consequences, but I have faith in your abilities." Ethan swallowed nervously. "Consequences? Like what?" Lyra's lips curved faintly. "Minor embarrassment, hopefully. But remember, this is also an opportunity. Your actions here will define your role in this palace and perhaps in the future of our world." Ethan nodded, trying to steady his racing heart. He had spent weeks observing, learning, and quietly dismantling conspiracies. But now his skills would be tested openly, under the eyes of the Queen and her court. There was no hiding, no subtlety. He had to act, and he had to succeed. The first trial was a test of logic and problem-solving. A complex holographic maze appeared in the main hall, filled with floating obstacles, moving platforms, and encoded doors. The goal was to retrieve a glowing crystal at the center. Aliens born and raised in this palace could solve it in minutes. But for a human unfamiliar with alien spatial logic, it seemed nearly impossible. Ethan studied the holographic patterns, recalling his observations from weeks of exploring hidden corridors and studying alien technology. Slowly, he moved through the maze, analyzing each obstacle, anticipating its movements, and using his instinct to navigate. Other participants relied on brute force or shortcuts, But Ethan's careful observation gave him an advantage. When he finally reached the glowing crystal, the hall erupted into murmurs of surprise. The council had not expected him to succeed, yet here he was, holding the prize. Queen Lyra's eyes reflected pride, though her expression remained calm. "Interesting," she said softly, as if speaking to herself. "He observes. He understands, that is." The second trial tested physical skill and endurance. Participants had to climb a vertical wall of shimmering energy, dodging moving beams and shifting platforms. Ethan hesitated at first. He was not trained for this, but he remembered his days navigating treacherous alien terrain and surviving dangerous exploration missions. He climbed, using both strength and careful timing. He fell once but quickly regained his footing, learning from his mistake. The crowd gasped as he reached the top, exhausted but triumphant. Once again, Ethan had succeeded where others had doubted him. By the third trial, Ethan was gaining confidence, but the challenge was different. This one tested diplomacy. A group of alien representatives from neighboring systems were brought in. Each had their own agenda, and Ethan was required to negotiate an agreement that satisfied all parties. Ethan's human perspective proved invaluable. Where the aliens relied on rigid protocol, he listened, asked questions, and found common ground. He suggested solutions that honored tradition while addressing concerns, surprising the diplomats and earning nods of approval. Even the rival factions watching from the shadows seemed unsettled. They had not expected a human to navigate such complex negotiations successfully. Queen Lyra observed silently. Ethan noticed her watching him closely, her expression unreadable. But he could sense respect growing, subtle yet undeniable. He realized that his human ability to think differently, to approach problems without assuming rules he did not fully understand, was a unique strength. The final trial combined all elements: logic, physical skill, and diplomacy. Ethan and several other participants were placed in a simulated crisis, a holographic projection of a fleet approaching the palace, with potential threats both outside and within. Participants had to manage defense, strategy, and negotiation simultaneously. Ethan's mind raced. He recalled the conspiracies he had uncovered, the patrol patterns, the hidden corridors, and the palace's technology. Using this knowledge, he coordinated defenses, anticipated enemy moves, and negotiated with holographic representatives to de-escalate tensions. The simulation ended, and the judges deliberated. The hall was silent, the tension palpable. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. He had done his best, but would it be enough? Finally, the head of the council spoke. "The human consort has demonstrated intelligence, courage, and integrity beyond expectation. He has passed the trials." The hall erupted into applause, some of it reluctant, some impressed, but all acknowledging his achievement. Ethan's heart swelled with relief and pride. He had proven himself, not just to the queen, but to the palace and the skeptical factions that had doubted him. Queen Lyra approached him, her glowing eyes softer than ever. "You have exceeded expectation," she said. "You are not just a consort. You are a partner, and perhaps more than even I anticipated." Ethan's cheeks flushed. I didn't expect to succeed. I just tried to survive and help." Lyra smiled faintly. "That is enough. You have done more than survive. You have shown that humans, though young in experience compared to our species, have ingenuity and courage that can shape events. That is admirable." The next few days were a whirlwind of celebration. The court acknowledged Ethan's achievements. Rival factions tempered their hostility, and even the conspirators who had doubted him began to reconsider their plans. Ethan moved through the palace with new confidence, aware that he had earned respect not only through skill but also through honesty, observation, and determination. Yet even as he celebrated, Ethan knew that challenges remained. The palace was a living entity, full of political games, hidden dangers, and unexpected twists. But he was no longer just a bewildered human stumbling through alien rituals. He had proven himself capable, resilient, and resourceful. He had survived, adapted, and now he had a voice in this world. One evening, Ethan and Queen Lyra stood together on the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The twin moons rose, casting silver light across the floating plants and shimmering pools. Ethan felt a deep sense of belonging. He was no longer an outsider. He had found his place in a world far from Earth. "You have changed," Lyra said softly, "not just in skill but in presence. You think differently, act decisively, and care for more than yourself. That is rare, Ethan smiled. I had no choice. This world. It's amazing, but it's also dangerous. I had to adapt, and I wanted to prove I could be worthy of standing beside you. Lyra's eyes softened. You are more than worthy. You are remarkable. Ethan felt a warmth he had never experienced. He realized that the accidental marriage that had thrown him into chaos had become a journey of growth, courage, and discovery. He had faced trials, learned new skills, and even begun to understand the complexities of alien politics. And yet he knew this was only the beginning. Greater challenges awaited, both from outside the palace and within. He had gained respect, yes, but he would need wisdom, strategy, and courage to face the next stage of his journey. As he looked at the glowing horizon, Ethan felt a strange thrill. This world was unpredictable, full of mysteries and dangers, but it was also a place of opportunity. He had survived by observing, adapted by learning, and now he was ready to act. Queen Lyra stood beside him, a silent reminder of the life he had stumbled into, and the destiny he had begun to claim. Together they had faced the trials, and together they would face whatever came next. Ethan realized that being human was no disadvantage. In fact, his human perspective, courage, and determination had proven invaluable. He was not just a consort by accident. He was a consort by choice, by action, and by growing capability. The shadows of doubt in the palace had been challenged, and for the first time Ethan felt not only acceptance but a sense of purpose. He had begun as an outsider, but now he was a participant in the future of this world. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew the greatest challenges were yet to come. The rival factions, the unknown dangers of the galaxy, and the responsibilities of his unexpected marriage would test him further. But he was ready. For the first time, he felt fully alive in this alien world, confident that he could face what lay ahead, not as a human stumbling blindly, but as a capable, courageous consort standing beside the alien queen who had changed his life forever. The trials were over, but the journey had only begun. The palace had grown tense. Even after Ethan's success in the trials, whispers of rebellion and conspiracy lingered in the shadows. The rival factions had not been eliminated. They were still plotting, now more desperate and dangerous than ever. Ethan knew that the final test of his journey had arrived. This was no trial by ceremony or simulation. This was real. Queen Lyra summoned him to the council chamber late at night. The glow of the twin moons filtered through the translucent walls, casting shifting patterns across the polished floor. She looked grave, her glowing eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and concern. They have chosen their moment, Lyra said softly. The factions plan to strike during the upcoming diplomatic summit. They intend to seize control and weaken the palace from within. You will accompany me. We cannot allow this, Ethan swallowed. The stakes were higher than ever. He had faced simulations, trials, and conspiracies, but now the danger was immediate, real, and deadly. I'm ready, he said. We stop them, together. Lyra's hand brushed his shoulder briefly, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Ethan felt a surge of resolve. He had learned to survive this world, to understand its people and technology, and now it was time to act decisively. The summit began the following morning. Ambassadors from neighboring systems filled the palace hall, their eyes curious, cautious, and wary of the human consort who had become famous for his unexpected successes. Ethan observed quietly, noting the positions of guards, the patterns of the diplomats, and the subtle gestures of the conspirators hidden among them. As the meeting progressed, Ethan noticed a group of cloaked figures attempting to approach the queen's dais. They carried concealed devices and moved with silent precision, intending to disrupt the proceedings. Ethan acted swiftly. Using knowledge he had gained from weeks of observation, he discreetly triggered the palace's security drones. Small glowing machines zipped silently across the hall, intercepting the intruders before they could reach the queen. A brief scuffle erupted, but Ethan remained calm, directing the drones and guiding the palace guards to neutralize the threat. The conspirators were caught off guard. They had underestimated the human, assuming that he would remain passive or paralyzed by fear. Instead, Ethan moved with confidence, combining strategy and intuition, proving that he could handle danger as well as any trained alien. Lyra watched him from the dais, her expression unreadable but her eyes glimmered with approval. Ethan's actions had not only protected her, but also preserved the dignity and safety of the diplomatic summit. Once the conspirators were restrained, Lyra approached Ethan privately. "You have done more than I expected," she said softly. "You acted with courage, foresight, and intelligence. The palace owes you a debt beyond words." Ethan shook his head, a faint smile on his face. "I just did what I had to. You're the queen. I wasn't about to let anyone harm you or the people who trusted me." Lyra's eyes softened. "That is why I married you, Ethan. Not for ceremony, not for tradition, but because you see, act, and care differently than anyone else here. You are human, yes, but you are also extraordinary." The celebration that followed was unlike any Ethan had experienced. The council formally recognized his bravery, and the palace acknowledged him not just as consort, but as a vital protector of the queen and her people. Even the rival factions were forced into submission, realizing that the human consort was not a figure to be underestimated. In the following days, Ethan began to take on more responsibilities. He oversaw palace security, advised on diplomatic matters, and worked alongside Lyra to ensure that the palace and the realm remained safe. His human perspective continued to prove invaluable, introducing strategies and solutions that the aliens had not considered. But the greatest change was personal. Ethan and Lyra grew closer, not through ceremony or obligation, but through trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect. They spent time together in the floating gardens, observing alien flora, and discussing their hopes for the future. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of oceans and mountains, of simple joys like music and movies. Lyra, in turn, shared her experiences as a queen, the challenges she faced, and the moments when she felt most alone. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the palace, Ethan spoke quietly. "I never imagined life could be like this. I didn't even want to be here at first, but now I can't imagine leaving." Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars above. "You were never meant to leave. You have found your place here not by accident, but by choice, courage, and heart. You have earned not just survival, but respect, trust, and something even rarer: connection." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. The accidental marriage that had thrown him into chaos had become a journey of discovery, courage, and love. He had faced trials, conspiracies, and dangers he could not have imagined, yet he had grown stronger, wiser, and more capable. In the months that followed, Ethan continued to adapt to palace life, but he also began planning for the future. He worked with Lyra to strengthen alliances, improve defenses, and introduce new strategies that combined human intuition with alien technology. The palace grew stronger, more resilient, and united under their leadership. One day, as Ethan and Lyra walked through the floating gardens, he paused to look at her. "Do you think people will ever stop underestimating me just because I'm human?" Lyra laughed softly, a sound that was rare and beautiful. "They may try, but you have proven yourself again and again. You are not merely human, you are extraordinary, and anyone who doubts that will learn quickly or suffer the consequences." Ethan smiled. "I guess surviving by accident turned into thriving by choice." Lyra reached for his hand, her touch gentle yet firm. "Yes, and together we will face whatever comes next. Your journey did not end when you entered this palace, it began." Ethan felt a sense of peace and determination. The world he had entered by accident had become his home. He had learned to navigate alien customs, confront conspiracies, and prove his worth not just as a consort but as a protector, a strategist, and a partner. And though challenges would continue to arise, he knew that he could face them, not alone, but alongside Queen Lyra, whose trust, respect, and connection had become his greatest strength. As the twin moons rose above the palace, casting silver light across the gardens and floating paths, Ethan realized that the accidental marriage that had changed his life was no longer a mistake. It was the beginning of an incredible journey, one that had tested him, transformed him, and ultimately allowed him to become more than he had ever imagined. He had entered the palace as an outsider, bewildered and unprepared. Now he was a hero, a protector, and a consort worthy of standing beside a queen who had faced loneliness, danger, and intrigue. Together they had survived threats, uncovered plots, and proved that even in a world far from Earth, courage, wisdom, and heart could make a difference. Ethan looked at Lyra, her eyes glowing softly in the twilight. "I never expected to be here, I never expected any of this. Lyra smiled, her hand still in his. Expectations are fragile. What matters is what you do when the unexpected comes, and you have exceeded all expectations. Ethan nodded, a quiet pride filling him. He had learned, adapted, and acted when it mattered most. He had faced trials and threats, uncovered conspiracies, and earned the respect of a world far from his own. The palace, once an alien maze of mysteries and dangers, now felt like home. The queen, once distant and formal, now trusted and valued him. And Ethan, once bewildered and accidental, now stood ready for whatever the future might hold. The story of a human who had stumbled into an alien queen's life had reached its climax. Danger had been faced, courage had been shown, and the bonds of trust, respect, and connection had been forged stronger than any obstacle. Ethan had not just survived, he had thrived. And as he stood beside Queen Lyra, watching the twin moons rise over a palace that now seemed less like a foreign world and more like a home, he knew that whatever came next, he was ready. The accidental marriage had become a journey of growth, bravery, and discovery. And in the end, it had revealed the truth, that even a single human, when willing to observe, learn, and act, could make a difference in the vast and mysterious galaxy. Ethan smiled, gripping Lyra's hand gently. We did it. Together. Lyra's eyes softened, reflecting trust, pride, and something deeper. Something that transcended worlds. Yes, Ethan, together.